Hello and welcome back to the Google Workspace Update podcast from Strawberry 7. My name is Adam.
And my name is Adam.
We're here every week to give you the latest updates around everything happening in Google Workspace. This podcast is available in audio format from your regular podcast provider and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7.
Coming up on the show today,
we have 8 updates for you today, although some of these are sort of update-lets, so not too long a show. But we've got an update for Google Meet, Docs, Drive, Sheets, Drive again, Meet and Calendar. So a lot of Drive updates in there. But let's get to it.
On with the show. Right, first up, we've got Google Meet. So this is a bit of a follow-on from last week's episode where we were talking about how you can record captions in Google Meet. So last week, Google didn't actually clarify the correct process for doing this. The update was just that you now can include captions in your recording, and we were hoping that our captions of last week's YouTube video, would have included the captions. However, I don't think it did, and so
spoiler alert, that didn't work, did it, Adam? Yeah.
So I did a bit of testing throughout the week, just to clarify what the process is. So if you would like to include captions in a Google Meet recording, then first off, you should start your Google Meet meeting. Then you can turn on captions, which is the little CC box, which is next to where you can toggle your camera on or off. Click on the 3 dots for more options, which is along the bottom of the screen. Select Manage Recordings. You then need to select a language for your captions. If you do not select a language, then the captions will not be included in the recording. And then click on Start Recording. Once the Google Meet recording has finished processing, you can view the recording in the usual way by looking in the Meet Recordings folder, which will be saved in your My Drive. And you should receive an email to let you know once it has been uploaded. The captions in the recording might not be visible straight away, so they may just need to finish processing. So during my testing, I found that I had to wait about 10 minutes after the video appeared in my Drive for the captions to actually be visible. So don't worry if you don't see them straight away. You may just have to wait a moment, and that may or may not depend on the size of your recording. When I was testing, it was only a couple of minutes long, so it appeared for 10 minutes. If you've got an hour long meeting, then it may take a little bit longer. The captions in the recording will include your name in brackets followed by your spoken words, and this is your name that you have set in your Google account settings, and it's not your username. So during the testing, I changed my name to Adam2, number 2 being my surname, and then in the next Meet recording that I did, it did show up as Adam2 was now speaking. It is not essential to turn on captions for the meeting itself, but it is essential that a language for the captions has been selected prior to starting the recording. You can manually turn captions on after the recording has started. My preference may be that you do have your captions on anyway, just as a visual reminder so that you know that they are there, but it's not essential that the captions are actually turned on to be included. And finally, most profanities will be starred out.
We had some fun with that during the testing, didn't we, Adam? Adam sent me a little screenshot with some profanities that were starred out on his testing. So thank you very much, Adam, for a very, very thorough explanation of that. Yes, apologies to any listeners last week where we sort of maybe left you a bit in the dark about how to enable that, but we were a bit clueless ourselves because we tried it and the captions indeed didn't turn on because we didn't select the language from the recording section of the meeting exactly as Adam's described there. We just pushed the CC button on, which only turned it on in the actual meeting for us, not for the recording. So thank you, Adam. That's a very, very good explanation of how people can turn that on. And just to sort of highlight for anybody who's unfamiliar, when Adam was talking about your name being used there and it not being a username, that's a very good kind of tip for anybody who is a little bit unfamiliar with Google, or even people who have just missed it a little bit. If you want to change your name on Google, just go to accounts.google.com when you're signed in, and you'll be able to change and update your personal information there. If you can't, it might have been disabled by your administrator of Google Workspace, in which case you just need to request it as relevant with your line manager or with your IT department to update your name there, although it should be correct if it's managed by somebody else. And it's very important to make sure that your name is correct, because I've actually been in meetings with people several times before where they haven't realised that years ago they updated their name to something a bit kooky, and they suddenly join a meeting and they've got that slightly weird name that comes up like a, I don't know, Pokemon character or something like that. That's not getting at you, Adam. I know you've never done that. Adam's a big fan of Pokemon. It was just the first thing I could think of. So if you have updated your name to anything a bit kooky, or it is still using your username, you can go to accounts.google.com. Update it from there.
Nothing is more embarrassing than the username or email address that you selected for yourself when you're 12 years old.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, so just have a think about that. Even if you're, listening to this and you're doing job interviews or something like that, Adam's absolutely right. The problem is you don't necessarily think about it or realise until you go into the meeting, and you don't even necessarily notice then your name in the bottom left. So I just wanted to cover that as well whilst we were talking about this update. Thank you, Adam. Well, we have actually turned captions on in this way for this recording, haven't we? So we said this last week, but fingers crossed, you go to our YouTube channel and you should see this recording with all of the captions turned on as well, and in that recording. And very useful to know that you have to wait as well for it to process a bit. That would have caught me out. Thank you so much, Adam. What have we got next?
Next up is Google Docs. So this is another update from a previous announcement, which was the option to view non-printed characters in Google Docs. So unfortunately, I've got a bit of bad news for this one. So this feature, this update, should have been fully rolled out by the 25th of January and should have been available to all Google users, but is currently still unavailable. So Google didn't actually officially announce that this is not there. I was just doing a bit of a research because, do you remember, Adam, a couple of weeks ago I asked you if we could change us from from scheduled release to rapid release, the other way around. And it was because of this update, because I kept looking for it, so I knew it should have been available and ready, but I just could not see it. And so I just did a bit of research into this, and I found something that Google posted on the 9th of February of this year, which just says that Google has paused the rollout for this feature while they evaluate performance and quality, and that Google will provide an update once rollout resumes. So that's a bit disappointing to hear, because I know this update, we were both looking forward to actually using this. So it should have been fully rolled out by the 25th of January, but unfortunately it's still not available.
Oh, that is disappointing. I do find that a very useful feature within Microsoft Word. How odd. Out of all of the updates that we've had lately, I wouldn't have thought that this would be a particularly complicated one for Google to sort of roll out. Obviously, they're having some trouble with it. Okay, bit of bad news there, but thanks for that update, Adam. Hopefully we'll see a update to the pause of the update, the previous update in the near future that says that it's rolling back out again. Thank you for that information. What have we got next, Adam?
Next up is Google Drive. So increasing visibility into unmovable items in Google Drive. So following the recent announcement of a new beta to move folders from My Drive to Shared Drive, Google is launching the ability for admins to generate a CSV report with more details about unmovable items, with greater visibility into which files are impacted and unmovable. Admins can then take necessary action, such as requests to transfer current ownership, make file copies, move content around, and more.
That's very, very useful. It's funny, after we had that update recently, I was working with a client where we were doing this exact thing, moving vast quantities of very, very complex folder structures from their My Drive account across to shared drives, and the unmovable items sort of dialogue was very, very useful in identifying potential issues that we needed to look at. So this is great that you can get even more details on a CSV report as to those sort of unmovable items. I don't think it's in the details of this update, but it would be interesting to know kind of exactly how that happens. I assume if Google have sort of thought this through, what would happen, because what was happening when I was doing it was you'd grab a whole load of files, you drag them to the shared drive, and then this dialog box would pop up saying, oh, these folders are unmovable, or some of these items are unmovable. Hopefully Google have just added a button there that basically says, give me a detailed report, and it will kind of spit that out.
Yes, yeah. One would hope. So then I imagine that that the CSV report, which I just mentioned, that will probably then just be placed into the root of your My Drive, or somewhere very easily accessible. This update did remind me. I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but it did remind me just the importance of ownership for files and how that they should not be ignored. So quite recently, one of our clients who we look after their Google, but they also have access to the admin console of their own Google platform as well. And when a user was leaving, they were very, very keen to delete that user straight away. And they did not press the transfer ownership button at all. And so this was right at the start of the summer holidays. So then we had 6 weeks or so before we were next in contact with them again. But because they had just deleted the user and did not transfer the ownership, all of their files, everything was gone.
Yeah.
But because it was at the start of the summer, and we didn't see them for another 6 weeks until anybody realised that anything had gone, it passed the threshold to restore the user, to restore their files, or to do anything about it. So it just reminded me of that, and so you should not forget about the importance of file ownership. So if it does say that you can't do something with a file because this person is the owner of that file, it does need to be addressed in an appropriate way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really good point that Adam brings up. And just to expand on that a little bit, for anybody a bit confused about that structure there, that's basically where we've got a centralised admin account with files stored in the My Drive. For various reasons, we haven't used Shared Drive or haven't migrated that over to Shared Drive yet because of security requirements. And everything's shared out of My Drive. And so Adam's quite right, because My Drive works in a different way to Shared Drive, where the owners of anything that's created are whoever created that, whoever was logged in and created that file. Adam's quite right. They can be there for, an institution for 3 years or something like that, and creating files left, right and centre all over this shared area, this area everybody's got access to. You delete that user and you don't transfer their files to the admin account, which is what we would have done if we deleted them, then those files are just gone. They're just deleted, and they'll be deleted all across that shared drive. And like Adam said, because of the summer holidays, no one noticed. It was just a very odd set of circumstances, wasn't it, Adam?
Yes, it definitely caused quite a bit of a disruption, because lots of the files were all collaboration files. So many people were working on them, but because this one user was the owner of, not all of them, but quite a few of them, the files that they were the owner of all deleted. Also, there were lots of folders that this user had created, whereas other folders within the same organisation had put files within the folders. So all of those files all then went back into everyone else's My Drive. So then they saw, oh, why have I suddenly got all these files in my Drive? And it was because the folder that they had put them in didn't exist anymore because it had been deleted. So then that is just caused... It was a bit of a nightmare. It was a bit of a mess. And so hopefully that was a lesson learned.
Yes. I mean, it's also for any, IT administrators out there listening or MSPs out there listening, it's, sort of preaching probably to the converted, but it's, you just got to be very cautious if you're giving your users administrative access to any platform. It is always a bit of a difficult thing that you get caught in a place with, like we did with this particular client, where they just say, I want access, and that's the end of it. Because at the end of the day, it is their platform, it is their data. There's only certain things that you can, you can do. But we were very, very clear to say to this client, look, if we will give you access, but there is a huge amount of responsibility with this administrative access, and if anything goes wrong as a result of anything that you've done when you're in there, we are not liable. We are not. It's not on us, it's on you doing that, because you can only support people so far. But that is a good example of that there, Adam. So who's this, going back to this update then, who is this going to be, this sort of unmovable items visibility? Who's it going to be available for, and when are we looking at rolling this out?
So this one is going to be available to Google Workspace Essentials, Business Standard, Business Plus, Enterprise Essentials, Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Plus, Education Fundamentals, Education Plus, Education Standard, the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, and Non-Profits, and Legacy G Suite Business customers. So I'm thinking that's probably everybody that has access to shared drives, or everybody that would have a need for this feature. Does have access to it. So the rolling out for a rapid release is now. Launch to scheduled release is planned for February the 20th.
Ah, brilliant. So that's the day this podcast is released, I think. So that's fantastic. People won't have to wait around very long to see that. Just going back to what we were saying about where this might be visible, just as a reminder to everybody, if you go into the admin console, there is the reporting section as well, where you can view audit logs and you can view drive logs and things like that. So maybe Google's added a place in there. Apologies for us not knowing where you actually go to activate these reports, but Google just hasn't released that information in this update. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next is a Google Sheets update. So they're changing the power function in Google Sheets. So the power function, which returns a number raised to a power, will now return a real valued root when trying to take the odd root of a negative number.
Excellent. Now, Adam and I were talking about this update before we started recording, and to be totally honest, we have no real idea what this actually means. It's a bit beyond Adam and I's mathematical understanding. I did do a little bit of research. I understand what the power function does, and understand vaguely that I believe what it's saying is it will return a real number rather than an expression when it's dealing with these negative numbers, trying to take an odd root negative number. As always, we do put a link to this update document on our podcast notes and on the video notes, and there is a link in here to the power function within Google, and they do give some examples, including some negative examples. So I think from memory the example was -8 to the power of a third, and that returned -2 or something like that as an actual number. So we don't understand this very well, but hopefully if you're listening and you understand mathematics better than us and it's relevant for you, you will find that a useful update. Adam was saying something beforehand as well that was a very good point as well. What was that, Adam?
So with this update, and with many updates, sometimes Google provides a graphic to go along with it, just so you've got that visual, so you can kind of see what is going on. And so they did give us a graphic to go along with this one. However, what would have been especially helpful would have been if there was an example of how it used to be before this update actually occurred. So then you can just have it as a bit of a comparison. So you can say, it used to do this, and now it's doing this. So I can see how it functions now, but because my understanding of maths is limited to what it is, then I'm not really sure how it would have been perceived before.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Adam. Completely agree with you. Who's this available for, Adam?
So this is going to be available to absolutely everybody, and it's also available right now.
Excellent, that's brilliant. Okay, we've got another Google Drive update next, haven't we? And then I think another one after that as well. So it's Google Drive season, clearly.
So there's a new hand-free PDF annotation support in the Google Drive app for Android. So you can now use your fingers or a stylus to freely write annotations on a file shown in the Drive preview screen on Android devices. These annotations can be saved on the file if it is a PDF or a PDF copy, can also be made with the annotations saved onto it. So this is only available for Android devices, but it really reminded me of a feature that's just standard with lots of Apple devices, which is the markup function, where you can freely draw over PDFs and files on Apple devices, whereas it looks like you can now do that through Google Drive, but only on Android for now.
Yeah, that I completely agree with you. That was exactly what I thought. I thought, this is like the markup function. So that's really handy that that's going to be integrated into Google Drive. I have to say, I've been handling PDFs quite a lot in Google Drive recently within Google Chrome, and I find it a bit... I don't find it great. I mean, for me, I've been looking at architectural drawings, and I've been opening them in Google Drive. And the problem is, when you kind of click on the PDF in Google Drive, it's sort of, maybe it's me not using it properly, but it opens and you can't really easily kind of zoom in or manipulate it. It's almost like just a preview, but then there doesn't really seem to be a way of properly opening it. I think Google really need to improve how PDFs are viewed within Chrome, how you sort of open them and how you interact with them. Because what I'm having to do, what I'm finding I'm constantly having to do, is simply download the PDF and open it in preview and kind of zoom in and be able to move around or be able to do anything that I want to do there.
Yeah, I was just thinking it was a bit ironic that you're saying that you struggle to preview them, because just like you, because I use the Apple application preview to view my PDFs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think they just need to make some improvements there. So good to see that they're making some improvements with you being able to annotate them. Like you say, only on Android, but we've got markup on Apple anyway, although I don't think that's kind of directly integrated within Drive, but hopefully this update will kind of find its way to the iOS version of the Google Drive app as well.
Yeah, I expect we'll probably see that update coming quite soon, I imagine. But I also thought this update is probably quite handy for users on the go. So maybe if they've popped out for a business meeting or for coffee or whatever, they're on the go, so they're on their mobile device. So then they can quickly annotate a PDF if required, or maybe even just jot some notes onto it, so then they could then go and work on it properly once they're back in the office and they're on a desktop or Chromebook or a non-mobile device.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Adam. Absolutely. I think it would also be really handy for those customers who have used Google Drive as a kind of certain folders as like a drop area for their clients. So it's very handy if you've got a client, if you are Google Workspace like we are, for example, but you've then got a client who just isn't Google Workspace, doesn't get Google Workspace or whatever, you can say to them, hey, it's no problem, when you're done working on your Word document or your Excel document or whatever, PDF it, and you can give them a folder that they can essentially drop into that you've given them, just public access rights into. And they can drop the document into there, and then you're right, Adam, you could kind of call that up, annotate it. So I think there's all sorts of use cases there for doing that. Lovely, thank you, Adam. What's this next Google Drive update?
Right, so next up, as you say, it's another Google Drive update. So back in December, Google announced an upcoming shared drive setting for content managers to modify shared drives. All content managers will now have the ability to share folders by default, in addition to their current capabilities of editing, reorganizing, and deleting shared drive content. Enabling content managers to share folders is a highly requested feature that will help organizations better manage access to their data. So just a bit more on this. Only newly created shared drives will automatically inherit the new default setting based on the admin preferences. All existing shared drives will keep the old behavior and can be updated as needed. Google is also introducing a new Drive API method that allows developers to update the new setting for content managers to modify shared drives programmatically. For example, if you wanted to change the settings for a large number of your existing shared drives in bulk, you could write and run a script to do so, or use the GAM command line tool.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a really, really useful feature. I completely understand why this has been a highly requested feature, because on shared drives, the only thing above Content Manager, the only rights and privileges that you have above Content Manager is Manager. And the problem is with Manager is you can then control everything. You can delete the shared drive, you can control who has access to it, you can manage the members and everything like that. So I can absolutely imagine a situation very, very commonly where in organisations people are going to want to share the drives within shared drives specifically to their colleagues for a particular project that they're working on or something they want to collaborate on, but you as the administrator or you as the line manager don't want to elevate them all the way to manager because you don't want them to be able to remove people and kind of control the ownership of that drive. So I can completely understand why this is a highly requested feature, and I think this is a great addition to Google Drive security capabilities. And yeah, the thing about the API and GAM being able to do that on a large number of shared drives is really useful as well, although I'd be a bit scared about running a script that sort of changed that on 200 shared drives at once or anything like that. So
maybe test it in an isolated area first.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure your script is absolutely correct. So how do people get started with that then, Adam?
So, to get started for the admins, this setting is currently on by default. To disable the setting for content managers to shared folders, go to the sharing settings in the Drive and Docs section of the admin console, scroll to the shared drive creation section, change the allow content managers to shared folders setting to off.
That's pretty straightforward then, sort of a normal thing in the admin console to be able to control that. That's great. And when can we see this available, Adam?
So, the rapid release and scheduled release for the shared drive setting started on February the 13th. The rapid release and scheduled release for the Drive API also started on February the 13th. So, this update is not going to be available to Google Workspace Business Starter, Frontline and Legacy G Suite Basic customers. It is also not available to users with a personal Google account, but it should be available to everybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think those customers on those level of products don't actually have access to shared drive at all. I don't think it's on for that level anyway, so that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we have a Google Meet update. So, improving accessibility of the Connect device feature on Google Meet hardware devices. So, this is very much a Google Meet hardware update, not a Google Meet as a whole. Google has updated the home screen on Series 1 Desk 27 and Board 65 devices to feature a Connect device button as a quick action. One of the key values of the Desk 27 and Board 65 devices is the ability to use it as a primary monitor by connecting it to a laptop. By surfacing the Connect device button, you can take advantage of this capability faster. Further, this improves the discoverability of the feature, which was only accessible via a physical button at the back of the Desk 27 and Board 65.
Okay, so just a small little sort of physical change there to those devices to make it a little bit easier to connect those other devices up. That sounds like a very logical sort of thing. We have it all the time, don't we, where manufacturers make very questionable decisions about certain placement of things. I remember when Promethean, for example, decided to put the serial number for their boards on the bottom of the boards, and then we had a whole load of boards mounted into kind of media walls, and they mounted right against the desk, and then we couldn't find the serial numbers and things like that. And you think, just fine, put it on the bottom, but I tell you what, put it on the bottom, the sides, the top, the back, things like that. It'd be really helpful. I tell you who actually I think makes the best, or one of the best little systems for their serial numbers, although they call them asset tags. No, not asset tags. Sorry, service codes. Is Dell, where they've got that new little. I think they do it mainly on their servers, but they've got that kind of little pull-out tab that you have. It doesn't. It's locked. You can't pull it out and lose it, but it's sort of it's hard to describe, isn't it? It's almost like a little bit of a tape measure. You sort of pull it out a bit, and then it's got the service tag on.
Yes, I think the easiest comparison for home users might be, say, maybe their Wi-Fi router at home may have a similar tag that has their Wi-Fi code on it, or something similar to that, but you can't physically remove it. You can pull it out to make it accessible, but it is attached, so you can't pull it out, lose it down behind your sofa or anything like that. But yeah, you're quite right. I think I've only seen that on Dell servers, not on their desktops.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is very handy to have that available.
Yeah, really, really handy. So, like that with Google, I can imagine moving that button to the front and making that physical button is a lot easier for people to use. And like they said, it's an accessibility feature. It's people who are maybe wheelchair users or people who are visually impaired or anything like that, partially sighted. It makes it a little bit easier to find, doesn't it?
Yes, especially if they mentioned that previously there was a physical button on the back of the device. Now it's just going to be there visible right at the front. So even I think it's just a quality of life update for everyone, really, almost regardless of ability, because maybe your physical Google hardware device, it may be mounted to somewhere and it's just not very practical to get to the back or something like that. Maybe it's on like a kiosk stand or whatever your setup. It's just a lot easier just to have it front and center right at the front, so it's more easily accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I agree, Adam. Yeah. Okay, great. And we've got a getting started section on this, but there's not much getting started, I imagine.
Yes, so to get started with this, there is no action required by anybody. So this update will be available automatically right across the board to everybody. So the rollout, the rapid release and scheduled release for this started on February the 14th, and this is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers as well as legacy G Suite Basic and Business customers. So right across the board for everyone.
Great, thank you, Adam. And I think we've got our last update now, haven't we?
Yes, that's right. So we've got a Google Calendar update up next. So a client-side encryption for Google Calendar is now generally available. So last year Google expanded the client-side encryption beta to Google Calendar to help customers strengthen the confidentiality of their data while helping address a broad range of data sovereignty and compliance requirements. Google is very happy to announce that client-side encryption for Google Calendar is now generally available to eligible Workspace editions. Additionally, based on feedback from the beta, Google has extended client-side encryption to support key migration and Google Takeout. When using client-side encryption for calendar events, your event description, attachments, and meet data is indecipherable to Google's servers. You have control over encryption keys and the identity service to access those keys. Google Workspace already has the latest cryptographic standards to encrypt data at rest and in transit between their facilities. With client-side encryption, Google is taking this a step further by giving customers direct control of encryption keys and the identity provider used to access those keys. This can help you strengthen the confidentiality of your data while helping to address a broad range of data sovereignty and compliance needs. Client-side encryption allows you to create a fundamentally stronger privacy structure, whether that's to help your organization comply with regulations or to better protect the privacy or your confidential data. Client-side encryption for Google Calendar on mobile is currently in beta. Google Workspace Enterprise Plus, Education Standard customers are eligible to apply for the mobile beta until March the 3rd, and I've added a link into our document to help anybody apply for that if they wish to do so.
That's fantastic, Adam. Thank you very much for that explanation. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before, didn't we, in quite a lot of detail in one of our other episodes, so I don't want to go into too much detail about that. I'll try and find that episode and link it in a card on our video on our YouTube channel. I think when we were talking about this last time, it was mainly that kind of compliance aspect, wasn't it, of if you've got an organisation where they're saying, okay, we work to these particular standards or we work to this particular encryption layer, or we simply get our encryption client tokens and certificates from this particular place. It just helps those clients to keep that all aligned and do that with Google Calendar and these Google facilities as well. So good to see that there's some advancement there in that as well.
Yes, I can see this being particularly helpful to top-end users, especially if you have really large customers, or somebody that we're having a really confidential meeting. Maybe it's a high profile client or something like this, or even just a confidential meeting where you don't want to say that you're having a confidential meeting with somebody, because maybe just the fact that you're having a meeting with somebody could give something away that you're not wanting everybody in your organization to be aware of, because of the meeting is regarding, and especially the attachments to go with that meeting as well. So I think it is good that the client-side encryption has been introduced to Google Calendar as well.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people who have spoken to me about Google Workspace in the corporate world, they do have a concern that Google sort of has access to all of their data, and Google is able to see everything, and Google's able to control everything. So I think Google is definitely trying to put people's minds at ease in that regard by saying, look, you can add your own encryption layer that's nothing to do with us. You know, we won't see it, we don't know anything about it. It reminds me of a situation where we had bioauthentication starting to come in for school dinners, and it wasn't so relevant for our primary schools, but it was quite used in secondary schools, and it was where the students would use their fingerprint to pay for their school lunches. You know, it's just a bit quicker at the till. They'd get to the till, put the fingerprint on, it would just debit it from their account. But the company was very keen to point out, they said, the biometrics that we've got, that we hold on your students, even we can't see them. They're encrypted by a separate kind of, like this, you know, a separate security company provides a encryption layer to encrypt them, and even we can't access them. They are completely enclosed to your account. So I think Google's trying to sort of alleviate people's concerns around Google's own access to their data as well.
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely agree. I think privacy has never been more at the forefront of everybody's minds, particularly since GDPR came into effect as well. Then people love to know that their data is theirs and nobody else can access it, regardless of whether it's a really big, well-trusted business such as Google. So people still love to know that just what is theirs and only they can see their own data. So regardless of what it is or where it is or where it's stored, that nobody else can access it, which is understandable.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Adam. What's the getting started on this?
Okay, so for the admins, this feature will be off by default and can be enabled at the domain, OU and group levels. Go to the admin console, then security, access and data control, and then go to client-side encryption. For the end users, you will need to be logged in with your identity provider to have access to encrypted content. To add encryption to any calendar event, click on the little shield icon that you should see at the top of an event creation card. This will add encryption to event description, attachments, and meet, while other items such as the event title, time, and guests remain on standard encryption.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the rollout for this rapid release and scheduled release should be fully rolled out on February the 14th, so that should have already happened. This is going to be available to Google Workspace Enterprise Plus, Education Plus, and Education Standard customers, but it will not be available to those other tiers. So it's very much a higher end update.
Yeah, it makes sense that it's right at that sort of top end for people who have, apart from anything else, the resources to be able to set up this client-side encryption and manage this client-side encryption on their systems like that. And nice to see that it's available on the education levels as well, because clearly Google has sort of had an awareness within their sphere and within their ecosystem that education customers are going to possibly require that for the safeguarding elements, because so many safeguarding meetings are booked through Google Calendar now, and there might be some sensitive details in there. To what you were alluding to earlier, Adam, about those sensitive details being on attachments or being within the details of the meeting itself. Although interestingly, it does say that I'm just going back there. This will add encryption to event description, attachments, and meet. Yes, so if you've got attachments there or description, which I suppose is where those sensitive details could be, that's all going to be on your client-side encryption. So it makes sense. Thank you very much, Adam. Okay, well, that's it, everybody. That is everything you need to know about the latest updates happening around Google Workspace this week. Remember that this podcast is available in audio format from your regular podcast provider, and also in video format, hopefully with captions now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7. As always, thank you so much for joining us this week.
We'll be back again next week with more updates.
Goodbye.
Bye.